The night sky over Havron 7 burned orange from the distant fires. Lieutenant Jake Morrison pressed his back against the cold metal wall and checked his rifle. Around him, 6 other soldiers waited in the shadows. They had been fighting the Vrelnari for 3 years now, and everyone was tired. But orders were orders, and tonight they had to destroy a supply depot. Jake gave the signal. His team moved forward like ghosts through the darkness. The Vrelnari compound sat quiet ahead of them. Too quiet. Jake felt his stomach twist with worry, but they had come too far to turn back now. They reached the outer fence and cut through it quickly. Inside the compound, large warehouses stood in rows. Jake pointed to the biggest one. That was their target. His team spread out and began placing explosives on the support columns. Everything went according to plan. Maybe too well. Jake was setting the last charge when he heard voices. Vrelnari guards were coming. He pressed the timer and ran. Behind him, his team scattered toward the extraction point. They had 60 seconds before everything exploded. Jake was halfway to the fence when the charges went off early. The blast threw him forward into the dirt. His ears rang so loud he could not hear anything else. Fire bloomed behind him, lighting up the night like day. Then the warehouse collapsed with a sound like thunder. Jake pushed himself up and looked back. His team was already at the fence, waving for him to hurry. But something made him stop. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard a new sound, small, weak, crying. A child was crying somewhere in that burning mess. Jake turned toward the collapsed warehouse. His second-in-command, Corporal Danny Price, shouted something at him. Jake could not hear the words, but he understood. They needed to leave now. The Vrelnari would send soldiers any minute, but that crying would not stop. Jake ran back toward the fire. Danny grabbed his arm, shaking his head hard. Jake pulled free and kept running. He heard his team yelling behind him, but their voices faded as he entered the smoke. The heat hit him like a wall. Pieces of burning metal and concrete lay everywhere. Jake covered his mouth with his sleeve and followed the sound of crying. It came from under a fallen section of roof. Jake dropped to his knees and started pulling away chunks of broken concrete. His hands began bleeding, but he did not stop. There. He saw movement. Small hands pushing at the rubble from below. Jake dug faster. The crying got louder. Finally, he pulled away a large piece of metal and saw the child. It was Vrelnari, not human. The child had blue-gray skin and large dark eyes filled with tears. She looked about 5 years old and wore a simple yellow dress now covered in dust and blood. The child stared at him in terror. Jake knew what he looked like to her. A human soldier. The enemy. The monsters from the stories her parents probably told her. He reached down slowly and spoke in a soft voice, even though she could not understand his words. The child shrank back, trapped against the rubble behind her. Jake kept his movements slow and gentle. He pointed at himself, then at her, then at the open air beyond the fire. She had to understand. He wanted to help her. An explosion rocked the ground. Secondary charges were going off as the fire spread. The roof above them groaned dangerously. Jake did not have time to be gentle anymore. He reached in and grabbed the child. She screamed and fought him, but he held her tight and started moving. The roof came down. Jake threw himself over the child, using his body as a shield. Heavy debris slammed into his back and legs. Pain shot through him like lightning. Something struck his head, and the world went blurry. But he kept his arms locked around the small Vrelnari girl, protecting her from the crushing weight. For a moment, everything was dark and silent, except for the ringing in his ears. Jake could not tell if he was alive or dead. Then he felt the child moving under him, still breathing. That meant he had to keep moving too. With a strength he did not know he had, Jake pushed himself up. His left leg screamed with pain and barely supported his weight. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his head. But the child in his arms was safe, scared, crying, but safe. Jake limped forward through the smoke and fire. Each step felt like walking through broken glass. His vision kept going dark at the edges. He knew he was badly hurt, but he forced himself to keep walking. The child needed him to reach safety. He stumbled out of the smoke into the clear night air. Ahead of him, he saw lights. Vrelnari soldiers were arriving with vehicles and weapons. Jake's training told him to run, to hide, to fight. But he had nothing left. His rifle was gone, lost in the collapse. He could barely stand. Jake fell to his knees and carefully set the child down on the grass. She looked up at him with those huge, dark eyes, no longer crying. Just staring. Jake managed a small smile, hoping she would understand he meant no harm. Then his strength gave out. He fell forward into the darkness, and the world disappeared. When Jake opened his eyes again, everything was white. White ceiling, white walls, white sheets on the bed where he lay. For a confused moment, he thought he was in a human medical facility. Then he noticed the equipment around him looked wrong. The shapes were different. The writing on the machines used symbols he did not recognize. He was in a Vrelnari hospital. Jake tried to sit up, and pain exploded through his body. He gasped and fell back against the pillow. His left leg was wrapped in bandages. His ribs hurt with every breath. His head pounded like drums were playing inside his skull. A door opened. Jake turned his head slowly and saw two Vrelnari guards enter. They carried weapons and watched him with hard eyes. Jake waited for them to shoot him or drag him away to a prison cell, but they just stood there, watching, waiting. Jake closed his eyes and tried to understand what was happening. He was alive. The Vrelnari had not killed him. They had treated his wounds instead. Nothing about this made sense. The child. He remembered the little girl in the yellow dress. Was she alive? Had he managed to save her? Jake had so many questions, but no answers would come until the Vrelnari decided what to do with him. He was their prisoner now, deep in enemy territory, and completely at their mercy. 3 days passed in the White Room. Jake drifted in and out of sleep, his body fighting to heal. The guards changed shifts, but never left him alone. Doctors came and went, checking his wounds with efficient movements. They spoke to each other in the Vrelnari language, soft, clicking sounds mixed with words Jake could not understand. On the 4th morning, Jake woke to find the room different. Someone had brought flowers and placed them on the small table by his bed. The guards stood straighter, more alert. Something important was about to happen. The door opened, and she walked in. She was tall for a Vrelnari, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant style, and she wore deep purple robes that marked her as someone of high rank. But what caught Jake's attention were her eyes. They were the same large, dark eyes he had seen on the child in the burning building, filled with intelligence and something else. Something that looked like pain. Behind her, holding tight to her hand, was the little girl. She wore a clean white dress now, and her injuries had been treated. When she saw Jake, she stopped walking and stared at him with wide eyes. The woman spoke in the Vrelnari language. One of the guards stepped forward, holding a small device. He placed it on the table near Jake and pressed a button. When the woman spoke again, the device translated her words into English. "I am Commander Kira. This is my daughter Lena. You saved her life." Jake tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. Kira raised a hand, and he stopped moving. She pulled a chair closer to his bed and sat down gracefully. Lena stayed behind her mother, peeking around at Jake. "How do you feel?" Kira asked through the translator. "I have been better," Jake said. His voice came out rough from not speaking for days. "Is she okay? Your daughter?" Kira's expression softened slightly. "She has a broken arm and some burns, but she lives because of you. The doctors say she would have died in that collapse if you had not protected her." Jake nodded slowly. "I am glad she is safe." "Why did you do it?" Kira asked. The question was direct, almost harsh. You are a soldier. We are your enemy. You could have escaped. Your team got away safely, but you came back for a Vrelnari child. Why? Jake looked at the little girl still hiding behind her mother. Because she was a child. That is all that mattered. Kira stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood and spoke to Lena in their language. The girl shook her head at first, but her mother spoke again, more gently. Slowly. Lena walked around the chair and approached Jake's bed. She held out a small drawing. Jake took it carefully. It showed two figures. One was clearly Lena in her yellow dress. The other was larger, wearing what looked like a soldier's uniform. Between them, she had drawn a bright red heart. She wanted to thank you, Kira said. She calls you the brave one, the one who did not run away. Jake felt something tight in his chest. He looked at the drawing again, then at the small child watching him with hopeful eyes. You are welcome, Lena, he said softly. Lena smiled for the first time. It changed her whole face, making her look even younger. She said something in Vrelnari that the translator did not pick up. Then she ran back to her mother's side. Kira sat down again. This time her expression was serious. We need to discuss your situation, Lieutenant Jake Morrison. You are not a normal prisoner. My government does not know what to do with you. Are you going to execute me? Jake asked. He tried to keep his voice steady. No, Kira said firmly. That would be impossible now. You have created a complicated situation. In Vrelnari culture, a life debt is sacred. You saved my daughter when you had every reason to let her die, when you had orders to escape. You risked your life and nearly died protecting her. That creates a bond that cannot be broken. Jake frowned. I do not understand. Kira leaned forward. A life debt must be repaid. I owe you something so great that I cannot measure it. My daughter's life, my only child. By our oldest laws, this debt must be honored. I do not want anything, Jake said. I just wanted her to be safe. That does not matter, Kira replied. The debt exists, whether you claim it or not. And there is only one way to properly repay a debt of this magnitude, through bonding. Bonding? Jake repeated. The translator made the word sound strange. You would become part of our family unit, Kira explained. A guardian to Lena, a partner in her protection and upbringing. It is the highest honor in our culture and the most binding relationship outside of blood. Jake felt his head spinning, and not just from his injuries. You want me to join your family? But I am human. I am your enemy. You were my enemy, Kira said quietly. Now I do not know what you are. You saved my daughter. That makes you something different, something our two peoples have never dealt with before. I cannot do that, Jake said. I have duties. My team, my commanding officers, they need me. Your commanding officers have been contacted, Kira told him. We opened communication channels specifically for this situation. They are negotiating now about what to do with you. But understand this, Lieutenant Morrison. Until this debt is satisfied, you cannot leave. If you try to leave without honoring the bond, my honor is destroyed. My family's honor is destroyed. I would rather die than allow that. Jake looked at her face and saw she was completely serious. He glanced at Lena, who was playing with the edge of her mother's robe, occasionally looking up at him with curious eyes. This is insane, Jake said. You cannot keep me prisoner because I saved a child. I am not keeping you prisoner, Kira corrected him. I am protecting what is mine to protect, the debt, the honor, the bond that now exists whether you accept it or not. You saw my daughter as a person, not an enemy. That changed everything. She stood up and called Lena to her side. Before leaving, Kira turned back to Jake one more time. You will have time to heal and think. I will return tomorrow, and we will talk more. But know this, Jake Morrison. You showed mercy when you had no reason to. You showed honor when the world expected you to show hate. That is not something my people can ignore. One way or another, you and I are connected now. The only question is whether you will fight that connection or accept it." She left with Lena, the guards closing the door behind them. Jake lay back against his pillow and stared at the ceiling. His whole world had turned upside down in a few minutes. He was trapped, not by chains or walls, but by something far stronger: honor, debt, family. These were words he understood, but he had never imagined they would bind him to the enemy he had been fighting for 3 long years. 2 weeks passed slowly in the Vrolnari compound. Jake's body healed faster than his mind could adjust to his new reality. The doctors removed his bandages and declared him fit to move around. The white medical room became a comfortable apartment with a bed, a table, and large windows that looked out onto a garden. But he was still a prisoner, even if they called it something else. Kira came every day. Sometimes she brought Lena, sometimes she came alone. They sat at Jake's table and talked through the translator device. At first, the conversations were stiff and formal. Kira asked about his injuries. Jake asked about the negotiations with his superiors. Both of them danced around the real issue hanging between them: the life debt, the bond. On the 10th day, Kira arrived with something different. She carried a small electronic tablet and set it on the table between them. "I am going to teach you our language," she said. "If we must spend time together, we should be able to speak without this machine between us." Jake looked at the tablet showing Vrelnari symbols. "Why? You could just keep me locked up until your people and mine figure out what to do with me." "Because Lena asks about you every morning," Kira replied. Her voice was softer than usual. "She wants to visit you, to talk to you. But she does not speak your language, and listening through a translator makes her frustrated. She is only 6 years old. She wants to hear your voice, not a machine's voice." Something in Jake's chest tightened at those words. He picked up the tablet. "Show me." The lessons became part of their daily routine. Kira was a patient teacher, and Jake discovered he had a decent ear for languages. The clicking sounds were hard at first, but he practiced until his tongue learned the movements. Within a week, he could say simple greetings. Within 2 weeks, he could hold a basic conversation. Lena started coming with her mother every afternoon. The little girl had lost her fear of Jake completely. She would run into his apartment and climb onto the chair next to him, chattering away in Vrelnari. At first, Jake only caught a few words, but slowly, understanding came. She told him about her drawings, about her favorite foods, about the flowers in the garden and the small pet she had that looked like a fuzzy blue rabbit. She told him about her father who had died 2 years ago, though she barely remembered him. She told him about the nightmares she still had about the building falling down. "But then I remember you were there," Lena said one day in simple words Jake could understand. "You did not leave me. You stayed when the walls fell. That makes the bad dreams go away." Jake looked at this small child who had somehow decided he was safe, even though he wore the uniform of the people who had killed her father. He felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Kira watched these interactions in silence. Jake began to notice things about her: the way she touched Lena's hair when the girl was not looking, checking that she was real and safe. The sadness that appeared in her eyes when Lena mentioned her father. The careful way she held herself, like someone carrying a heavy burden alone. One evening, after Lena had fallen asleep on Jake's couch, Kira stayed behind. She sat across from Jake in the gathering darkness, neither of them turning on the lights. "Tell me about your mate," Jake said quietly in Vrelnari. The words felt clumsy in his mouth, but he managed. Kira was silent for a long time. "His name was Torin. He was a scientist, not a soldier. He studied plants and wanted to make things grow in difficult soil. He died in one of the first attacks when your people came to our colonies." She paused. "He was trying to help evacuate a research station. A human ship fired on them. No warning, no mercy." Jake felt the words like a punch to his stomach. "I am sorry." "Are you?" Kira asked. There was no anger in her voice, only curiosity. "Your people killed him. Your people have killed thousands of us, just as we have killed thousands of you. Why should you be sorry for one scientist you never knew?" "Because he was Lena's father," Jake said. "Because he was your mate. Because he was a person, not just an enemy. I am sorry for all of it. This whole war is wrong." Kira looked at him across the dark room. "When the war started, I believed humans were monsters, evil creatures who wanted to destroy us for no reason. I volunteered to fight because I wanted revenge for Torin. I wanted to kill as many of you as I could." She looked down at her hands. "Then you saved my daughter. You, a human soldier with every reason to hate us. You nearly died protecting a Vrelnari child. How do I hold on to my hate when you did that?" "I have lost friends too," Jake said. "Good people. My best friend Danny from basic training died on Sector 9. A Vrelnari bomb took out his entire squad. I wanted revenge too. I spent 3 years fighting and hating and watching people die on both sides." He gestured around the room. "Now I am here, learning your language, playing with your daughter, and I cannot remember why we are even fighting anymore." "A trade dispute that went wrong," Kira said bitterly. "That is what the history books will say. A misunderstanding about mining rights that turned into a shooting war. Thousands dead because diplomats on both sides were too proud to back down." They sat in silence, two soldiers from opposite sides, both tired of the war that had taken so much from them. "What is bonding really?" Jake asked finally. "Explain it to me properly." Kira took a breath. "In our culture, family is everything. Parents protect children, yes, but so do bonded partners. When someone saves a child's life as you did, they become that child's second protector. It means you would have equal responsibility for Lena's care, her safety, her future. It means you and I would be partners in raising her, bound by law and honor." "Like being married?" Jake asked. "Not exactly," Kira said. "It can become that, but it does not have to be. The bond is about the child, not about romance. Many bonded partners never become mates, but the commitment is just as serious. You would be her guardian. You would be part of our family. You could not abandon her or me without breaking sacred law. And if I refuse? Then the debt stays unpaid," Kira said. "My honor is stained. Lena grows up knowing that the man who saved her rejected her. And you remain here, trapped, because we cannot let you go and we cannot punish you. Everyone loses." Jake thought about Lena sleeping on his couch, clutching a stuffed toy. He thought about the drawings she made for him, the way she laughed when he mispronounced Vrelnari words, the trust in her eyes. He thought about his squad back on the human side of the war, his duty, his oath to serve humanity. But he also thought about what he had learned in these weeks. The Vrelnari were not monsters. They had families and hopes and fears just like humans did. They loved their children. They mourned their dead. They wanted the war to end as much as anyone. "I need time," Jake said. "I know," Kira replied. She stood and gently lifted Lena from the couch. The girl mumbled something in her sleep and wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. "Take the time you need. But know that Lena already thinks of you as her protector. She already thinks you are part of our family. Whatever you decide will shape her entire life." She carried Lena to the door, then paused. "You asked me why I come here every day, why I teach you our language, why I bring my daughter to sit with you. Why?" Jake asked. "Because I see something in you that I thought was uniquely Vrelnari. Honor. True honor, not the kind that comes from following orders, the kind that makes you do what is right even when it costs you everything." She looked back at him. "That is rare, Jake Morrison, in any species. I want Lena to grow up knowing that kind of person. Whether you accept the bond or not, you have already changed her. You have changed me too." She left, and Jake sat alone in the darkness, wrestling with an impossible choice that would determine the rest of his life. The message came on the 6th week. Jake was in the garden with Lena, trying to pronounce the Vrelnari name for the purple flowers she loved, when 2 guards approached. They looked serious. One of them handed Jake a communication device. "Your Colonel Brandon Hayes wishes to speak with you," the guard said in careful English. Jake took the device and pressed the button. The screen showed his commanding officer's weathered face. Colonel Hayes looked older than Jake remembered, more tired. "Morrison," the colonel said. "Good to see you are alive." "Sir," Jake replied. He felt strange speaking English again after weeks of Vrelnari. "We have reached an agreement. Prisoner exchange. You will be returned to us in 3 days. A transport will meet at the neutral zone on the border. Be ready." Jake felt his stomach drop. He glanced at Lena, who was watching him with curious eyes. "Sir, the situation here is complicated. There is a cultural issue that needs to be addressed." "I know about their life debt nonsense," Hayes said bluntly. "Our diplomats explained it. Not our problem, Morrison. You are a human soldier, and you are coming home. That is an order." The screen went dark. Jake stood there holding the dead device, feeling the world shift under his feet. That evening, Kira came to his apartment alone. Her face was pale, her movements stiff. She had already heard the news. 3 days, she said quietly. "Then you leave." "I have orders," Jake said. "I am a soldier. I have to follow orders." "I understand duty," Kira replied. Her voice was hollow. "But the debt remains. It will follow me forever. My family's honor will be marked with shame. Other families will not let their children play with Lena because her mother could not repay a life debt." Jake had not thought about that. "They would punish Lena for something I did?" "They would pity her," Kira said. "Which is worse. She would grow up always knowing that the man who saved her rejected her, that she was not worth staying for." The words hit Jake hard. Before he could respond, he heard small footsteps. Lena appeared in the doorway, already in her sleeping clothes. She had been listening. "You are leaving?" Lena asked in Vrelnari. Her voice shook. "You are going away?" Jake knelt down so he was at her level. "I have to go back to my people. They need me." "I need you," Lena said. Tears started rolling down her blue-gray cheeks. "You are my protector. You saved me from the fire. You cannot leave me." "Lena, I am not abandoning you," Jake tried to explain. But the little girl was crying too hard to listen. She ran to him and wrapped her small arms around his neck, holding on tight. "Please do not go," she sobbed. "Please stay with us. I will be good. I promise I will be good. Just do not leave." Jake held the crying child and felt something break inside his chest. He looked up at Kira and saw tears on her face too, though she tried to hide them. In that moment, Jake realized the truth. He did not want to leave either. The next 3 days were torture. Jake tried to explain things to Lena, but she stopped talking to him. She would not come to his apartment. When he saw her in the garden, she turned away. Kira told him the girl was having nightmares again, waking up screaming about buildings falling and people leaving her alone. On the morning Jake was supposed to leave, he packed his few belongings and prepared to board the transport. The guards escorted him to the vehicle. Kira stood at a distance with Lena, both of them watching in silence. Jake climbed into the transport and the door closed behind him. The vehicle started moving. Jake looked out the window at the compound growing smaller. He thought about returning to his unit, to his old life, fighting Vrelnari soldiers who had families just like Kira's. Killing people who might have children like Lena. He could not do it anymore. The transport crossed into human territory. Jake was taken to a military base where Colonel Hayes waited with other officers. They asked him questions about the Vrelnari compound, about their weapons and defenses. Jake answered mechanically, his mind elsewhere. That night, alone in his assigned quarters, Jake could not sleep. He kept seeing Lena's face, hearing her cry. He had saved her from fire and rubble, but now he was hurting her in a different way. What kind of hero did that make him? The next morning, Jake requested a meeting with Colonel Hayes and Ambassador Lynn Carter, who had handled the negotiations. They sat in a secure conference room while Jake explained his idea. "I want to go back," he said. "I want to accept the bonding ceremony." Hayes leaned back in his chair. "You want to join a Vrelnari family? Have you lost your mind, Morrison?" "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But think about what this could mean. A human soldier bonded to a Vrelnari commander's family. It would be a symbol, a bridge between our peoples. It could help end this war." Ambassador Carter looked interested. "He has a point. The gesture would be unprecedented. It might open doors for real peace talks." "Or it could be seen as treason," Hayes countered. "Some people will say you are betraying humanity." "Some people already think this war is wrong," Jake said. "I am one of them. We are killing each other over mining rights and pride. How many more have to die before we admit this is pointless?" The debate continued for hours. Finally, Hayes agreed to take the proposal to higher command. Days turned into a week. Jake waited, feeling every hour that passed like a weight on his chest. Then the emergency alert came through. Intelligence had intercepted a communication. Vrelnari extremists, angry about the peace talks, were planning an attack. Their target was Commander Kira, who they saw as a traitor for treating a human with honor. Jake did not wait for permission. He grabbed a weapon and ran to the motor pool. He stole a fast transport and programmed it for the border. Alarms blared behind him as he sped away from the base. The transport crossed into neutral territory, then into Vrelnari space. Jake expected to be shot down any moment, but he kept flying. He had to reach Kira before the extremists did. He arrived at the compound to find chaos. Smoke rose from one of the buildings. Vrelnari were running and shouting. Jake landed the transport hard and jumped out. He saw Kira near the main building fighting 3 attackers. She had a weapon but was outnumbered. Blood ran down her arm from a wound. Jake ran forward and fired. 1 attacker fell. The other 2 turned toward him in surprise, giving Kira the opening she needed. She took down one while Jake engaged the other. The fight was quick and brutal. When it ended, both attackers were dead or unconscious. Kira stared at Jake in shock. "You came back. How did you know?" "We intercepted their plan," Jake said, breathing hard. "Where is Lena?" "Safe. Hidden in the shelter with the other children." Kira looked at her wounded arm, then back at Jake. "You crossed the battle lines to warn me. You saved my life." Jake suddenly understood what he had done. The life debt. Now it goes both ways. "Yes," Kira said softly. A small smile appeared on her face despite the pain and chaos around them. "Now we are even, or maybe we are just more tangled together than ever." More Vrelnari soldiers arrived and secured the area. They looked at Jake with suspicion until Kira explained what had happened. Word spread quickly. The human who had saved Commander Kira's daughter had now saved the commander herself. Jake knelt on the ground, exhausted and relieved. He had made his choice. There was no going back now. He belonged here, with this family, with these people. It felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. Kira sat down next to him. "You are going to be in so much trouble with your superiors." "I know," Jake said. "Worth it." They sat together in the aftermath. 2 former enemies who had become something neither could quite name yet, but both knew was important. The bonding ceremony took place 1 month after Jake returned to the Vrelnari compound. This time, he came with official approval from human command. The attack on Kira had changed many minds. People on both sides were tired of the violence and started asking if there might be another way. The ceremony was broadcast to both human and Vrelnari populations. Jake wore formal clothes from both cultures, half human military dress and half Vrelnari ceremonial robes. He felt ridiculous, but Kira assured him it was perfect. Lena stood between them wearing a white dress and holding both their hands. An elder spoke the traditional words in Vrelnari. Jake repeated them as best he could, promising to protect Lena as his own, to honor the family bond, to stand with Kira through whatever came. Kira spoke her own promises, accepting Jake as Lena's second guardian and her partner in raising the child. When the elder finished, Lena threw her arms around Jake's waist and would not let go. The audience watching on screens across both territories saw a human soldier hugging a Vrelnai child with tears in his eyes. That image became more powerful than any weapon either side had built. The days after the ceremony were strange. Jake officially became humanity's first ambassador to the Vrelnari people. Kira was assigned as the Vrelnari ambassador to humanity. They worked together, traveling between worlds, sitting in endless meetings with officials who did not trust them. But slowly, things changed. Jake and Kira started investigating the war's origins together. They dug through old records and interviewed people who had been there at the beginning. What they found shocked them both. The war had not started with either humans or Vrelnari. A corporation called Nexus Mining had manipulated both sides. They had falsified reports, staged attacks, and blamed each side for violence the other had not committed, all to create a war that would drive up the price of the minerals both species needed. Jake and Kira presented their evidence to both governments. The truth was ugly and made everyone angry. But it also gave both sides someone else to blame besides each other. Slowly, carefully, peace negotiations began. Jake moved into Kira's home properly. At first, their relationship was awkward. They were partners in raising Lena, but they were still learning to be family. Jake had his own room. They maintained polite distance. Both of them were careful not to assume anything beyond the bond they had agreed to. But Lena did not care about their careful boundaries. She demanded bedtime stories from both of them, holding Jake's hand on one side and Kira's on the other. She insisted they both come to her school events. She drew pictures of the three of them together and hung them all over the house. And somewhere in the middle of playing parent together, something shifted between Jake and Kira. He noticed the way she laughed at his terrible pronunciation of Vrelnari words. She noticed how gentle he was with Lena, never losing patience even when the girl was difficult. They started having coffee together in the mornings before Lena woke up, talking about everything and nothing. One night, 6 months after the bonding, Kira found Jake sitting alone in the garden. He was looking at the stars and seemed lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting next to him. "How strange life is," Jake said. "A year ago, I would have shot you on sight. Now I cannot imagine my life without you and Lena in it." Kira was quiet for a moment. "I feel the same way. You were supposed to be the enemy. Instead, you became the best thing that happened to us." Jake looked at her. In the starlight, she was beautiful in a way he had tried not to notice before. "Kira, I need to tell you something." "I know," she said softly. "I feel it too. This bond we have. It started as duty and honor, but it has become something more, has it not?" "Yes," Jake admitted. "Is that allowed? Can a bond become something else?" Kira smiled. "It happens more often than you think. Many bonded partners become mates eventually. The bond creates trust and respect. Those are good foundations for love." Jake reached out and took her hand. "I love you. I love Lena. I love this life we are building together. I know it is complicated and the whole galaxy is watching us, but I do not care anymore." "I love you too," Kira said. She leaned over and kissed him gently. It was their first kiss, soft and tentative and full of promise. The peace treaty was signed 2 years after the bonding ceremony. The war officially ended. Nexus mining executives were arrested and prosecuted. Both human and Varelnari governments agreed to joint colonies and shared resources. It was not perfect, and many people on both sides remained angry and suspicious. But the killing stopped. Jake and Kira continued their work as ambassadors, but they also built a life together. They became mates in a private ceremony with just close friends and family. Lena was the flower girl and cried happy tears through the whole event. 3 years after that, Kira became pregnant. The medical teams on both sides were fascinated. Human and Vrelnari biology was similar enough that children were possible, though rare. The pregnancy was difficult, but Kira was strong. Their son was born healthy, with Jake's brown eyes and Kira's blue-gray skin. They named him Torin, after the mate Kira had lost. Lena was 10 years old by then and completely devoted to her baby brother. One evening, Jake sat in the garden holding baby Torin while Lena practiced her homework beside him. She was learning human history and Vrelnari history both, growing up truly between two worlds. "Papa Jake," Lena said suddenly. She had started calling him Papa after the mating ceremony. "Tell me again about the day we met." Jake smiled. He had told this story many times, but Lena never got tired of hearing it. "You want to hear about the fire?" "Yes," Lena said. "I want to hear about how you did not leave me." Jake shifted Torin in his arms and began the story. He told her about the mission, the explosion, the sound of her crying in the rubble. He told her about digging through the broken concrete and finding her there, so small and scared. He told her about the roof falling and using his body to protect her. "I was really afraid," Lena said quietly. "I thought I was going to die." "I know," Jake said, "but you were brave. And I could not leave you there alone. You were just a child who needed help. Nothing else mattered." "Mama says you changed everything," Lena said. "She says one person choosing to be kind can change the whole world." Jake looked up at the stars, the same stars that hung over both human and Vrelnari worlds. He thought about how far he had come from that burning building, how one choice in the chaos of war had led him here, to a family he loved, to a peace he helped create. "Your mama is right," Jake said. "I learned something important that night. Courage is not about fighting. Real courage is about choosing kindness even when it is hard, even when it costs you everything, even when everyone expects you to walk away." Lena nodded seriously. "I am going to be like that when I grow up, kind and brave like you." Kira appeared in the doorway, smiling at the scene in the garden. Jake looked at his mate, his daughter, his son, his family, his life. He had protected an enemy's child, and in return he had gained everything worth having. The galaxy was still complicated. There were still problems to solve and prejudices to overcome. But Jake had learned that change started with single moments of compassion, with one person deciding to see beyond hate and fear. He had chosen kindness in a moment of war, and that choice had changed not just his life, but the future of two entire species. That was humanity's greatest strength. Not weapons or technology or conquest, but the simple, powerful choice to care for someone who needed help, regardless of who they were or where they came from. Jake held his son close and watched his daughter practice her homework and waited for his mate to join them. And he knew, without any doubt, that he would make the same choice again, every single time. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5c.